My wife was on dating apps while we were married. I could have survived the betrayal. What I couldn't process, she had told every single man she met that her husband had died. That husband was me. And I found out because one of those men sent her flowers to our house. This is a confession I received. The man who sent it asked me to read it exactly as he wrote it. I'm not a man who dwells. I process things, make decisions, keep moving. Karen always said that was one of my best qualities. She said it made her feel safe. What I didn't know was that she was using that same steadiness, my predictability, my routine, my trust as cover for something I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it myself. We'd been married 7 years. The kind of marriage that doesn't look broken because it isn't, not obviously, not loudly. We had a rhythm. Jobs we both liked. A house that finally felt like ours. Weekends that were quiet in a good way. I wasn't checked out. I wasn't absent. I was present and I was invested, and I thought she was too. The first sign was a notification on her tablet. She'd left it on the coffee table while she went to answer the door. A message preview, an app I didn't recognize, a man's name. 3 words before the screen dimmed. Thinking about you. I looked at it for a second, then I looked away. Filed it. Said nothing. But I didn't forget it either. Over the next 2 weeks, I paid a different kind of attention. Her phone face down more than usual. A new email account opened briefly on her laptop before she closed it. Small things, background things, nothing I could point to directly. Then, on a Thursday evening, her tablet lit up again on the counter while she was in the other room. I didn't plan to look. But I saw the preview before I could stop myself. 4 words this time. I miss you too. Signed with a name I didn't recognize. And underneath it, in the app's header, a small icon. A heart. A profile photo of a man I had never seen before. I set the tablet face down, walked to the window, stood there for a while. That was the moment it stopped being a suspicion. She went to visit her sister that weekend. The moment her car left the driveway, I sat down and opened the tablet. The app was still logged in. Her profile loaded immediately. I read it once. Then I sat back. Then I read it again because I needed to be completely sure I was understanding what I was looking at. Her photos were real Karen, unmistakably, in pictures I didn't recognize from our life together. Taken specifically for this. She had listed herself as a widow. 34. Lost her husband 2 years ago. Still learning how to live again. Looking for something real this time. I was her husband. I was alive. I had kissed her goodbye 4 hours earlier. I put the tablet down. Walked to the kitchen. Stood at the counter for a long time. Not rage. Something colder and stranger than rage. Vertigo. The specific kind that comes when something you are certain of simply stops being true, and the floor shifts underneath everything built on top of it. I went back and kept reading. Her messages went back 8 months. 8 months of conversations with men who believed they were talking to a widow rebuilding her life. She was warm with them, patient. She asked about their families, their losses, their hopes. She told them she understood grief because she'd lived it. She described her dead husband, me, as a good man she'd loved, but never felt fully seen by. Steady, but distant. Safe, but not exciting. She had taken the best version of me, handed it to strangers, and buried it. I read for 2 hours, then I called a lawyer. Not because I'd decided anything yet, but because I needed to understand where I stood before I walked into anything. The lawyer was calm and precise. I took notes. When I hung up, I went back to the tablet and documented everything. Screenshots of the profile, the bio, the conversations, dates, timestamps, names. Methodical. The same quality she'd described to strangers as safe but not exciting. I used it against her anyway. When she came back Sunday evening, she was relaxed, easy, in a good mood. Her sister sent her love. She asked what I wanted for dinner. We ate together, talked about the week ahead. She laughed at something I said. I watched her laugh and felt the distance between that and everything I'd read as a physical thing, a space I was standing inside that she didn't know existed yet. I gave it 3 more days. I wanted to be completely ready. On Wednesday evening, she sat down with her glass of wine and her tablet, the tablet she didn't know I'd already been through completely, and I sat across from her. I placed one thing on the table between us. My phone, already open, her profile, her photo, her bio, the word widow in the first line. She saw it and went still. The wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth and didn't move. She didn't say my name. She didn't say anything. Just stared at the screen with an expression I'd never seen on her face in 7 years. Not guilt. Something closer to someone who has been moving very fast for a very long time and has just run out of road. 8 months, I said. I've read all of it. I've spoken to a lawyer. And I've kept everything. I let that sit for a moment. Then I asked her the only question that still mattered. When you wrote about your dead husband, the one who was safe but not exciting, was that the truth? Or was that who you needed me to be so you could live with what you were doing? She didn't answer for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I needed a version of you I could leave, she said. I needed to grieve something before I could go. I nodded once. Then grieve it, I said. Because I'm done being a character in your story. I stood up, picked up my phone, and walked out. The lawyers handled the rest. The documentation made everything cleaner than it might have been otherwise. The fabricated identity, the timeline, the conversations, it all pointed in one direction without ambiguity. The process was painful. It was never uncertain. What stays with me now, months later, isn't the betrayal. It's the profile, the bio, the dead husband she built from pieces of me and handed to strangers like a photograph of someone who no longer existed. She had needed to kill a version of me to feel free, had needed a grave to stand over before she felt justified in leaving. And somewhere in writing that story, in deciding what her dead husband had lacked, what she deserved, what she was finally allowing herself to want, she had told the truth. Just not to me, never to me. To strangers who would never push back. To men who would hold her loss gently because they didn't know it was a fiction she'd written herself. I used to think the cruelest part of betrayal was discovering it. Now I think it's reading the version of yourself someone else wrote when they thought you'd never see it. She made me a ghost while I was still sitting across from her at dinner. She grieved a marriage she was still living in. And when I finally showed her, I'd been there the whole time, alive, awake, completely prepared. She had nothing left. Because you can't gaslight someone who already has the evidence, and you can't bury someone who never stopped watching. She needed me to be dead so she could finally feel free. I just forgot to cooperate.